Spirit. We will use this prayer written by Saint Gregory of Nazianzen. O all transcendent God, what other name describes you? What words can hymn your praises? No word does your justice. What mind can prove your secret? No mind can encompass you. You alone are beyond the power of speech. Yet all that we speak stems from you. You are beyond the power of thought. Yet all that we can conceive springs from you. All things proclaim you. Those endowed with reason and those bereft of it. All the expectation and pain of the world coalesces in you. All things utter a prayer to you, a silent hymn composed by you. You sustain everything that exists, and all things move together to your orders. You are the goal of all that exists. You are one and you are all. Yet you are none of the things that exist, neither are nor the whole. You cannot avail yourself of any name. How shall I call you the only unnamable, all transcendent God? Mary, seat of wisdom, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So this prayer is the synthesis of the course of philosophy of God. So sometimes we use it, and you will realize the more we study, the more you understand that prayer. We try to understand, not to understand, but to know who is God. Finally, at the end, we realize that even what we know, it's nothing in comparison of the reality of God. That introduces us for the chapter this morning on the idea of God. So I will divide the chapter in two parts. Today I will try to cover with you page 1 to 8, and next class 9 to 15, to the end. So, our idea of God. Even atheists use the idea of God. No? When Marx says God does not exist, to affirm that God does not exist, he must have an idea of what is God. So even atheists must have an idea of God. Otherwise, their affirmation, God does not exist, has no meaning. So when Marx speaks God, he must have an idea. But he denied that idea exists. For him, the idea of God is only a pure being of reason. You remember the two kinds of being. Being in the reality, real being, and being existing only in my mind. Being of reason. You remember when you study logic. Paul is a good golfer. You remember that? And we say that good golfer is the predicate, and Paul is the subject. So the idea of subject, the idea of predicate exists only in your mind. Does not exist in the reality. So for those who deny God, we can say that the idea of God for them is an idea of reason. But it is an idea. And their idea of God must correspond to our idea. Otherwise, there is no communication of idea. So let us go to the idea of God. It is an idea with some meaning. Even for those who don't believe, God, the idea of God must have a meaning. Like, for example, the idea of predicate or the idea of subject, even if they don't exist in the reality, they must have a meaning. So what is that meaning, which is included in the idea of God? So the proposition God exists, excuse me, if we are to examine it or to prove it, must have some meaning for us. we must attach some meaning to the subject God. Even if we deny God, to affirm that God does not exist or God exists was a meaning to the word God, to the concept God. Okay? But in fact, the concept God is probably the most universal concept on earth with the concept of thing. Because every civilization, every culture speaks about God. Even the atheists speak about God. They fight the idea of God, but they speak about God. You know? So that is, it is an idea which is common to all men. The idea of God or gods, God or gods, or goddess. So it is the idea, of course, the idea of God we have. It is necessary and inadequate idea. But for an atheist, of course, it is, I will say, almost a stupid idea, because it is stupid for them that we believe in God. Okay? But for us, it is not stupid. We have the idea of God. We affirm the existence of God. But we know already that we cannot have a perfect idea of God. But we try to have. For example, when you begin to study biology, you must have an idea of what is biology, no? Otherwise, you can go to the Department of Physics, or Department of Chemistry, or to go to the Department of Literature. So even if we don't know exactly what is biology, but we must have a certain idea of what is biology. So it is the same thing here. If we speak about God, we must have a first idea of what is God. So the first idea of God cannot be the idea of a God which is infinitely, eternally being. For the infinity and eternity of God and the other attributes of God require first that we prove its existence. So the first step we have to do when we study theology, natural theology, it is to prove, to be sure, to arrive to the certitude that God exists. It is the first part of the class. So we consecrate about 5 weeks to the 6 weeks, at least, for the existence of God. And from that, after, we will consecrate time for the attributes of God, to know better who is God, after they having demonstrated that God exists. Okay? So it is not a necessary idea. It is not an innate idea. We don't have that necessary. Anyway, all our ideas are acquired. No? Our idea, for us, for Aristotle, everything passed through our senses. Nothing is in my mind, is not in my senses. So that means my idea of God are acquired. Well, how we know that? When we grow, our father, our mother, they speak about God, and etc. Even if an atheistic family, they will speak about God as not existing. So it is an acquired, is not innate. Otherwise, if the idea was innate, why we study philosophy of God? We know everything. That is a good argument against idealists. If we have all knowledge, why we study? We study because we don't have knowledge. We want to acquire knowledge. Okay? So, number 4, it is a clear idea, not a distinct idea. What is the meaning of clear and distinct? That distinction comes from Descartes. So Descartes make a distinction between the idea that is clear and the idea that are distinct. And that is important for him because the criteria of truth are the idea that are clear and distinct. No. So a clear idea It is when I am able to distinguish an object from another object. For example, when you are 4 years old and your mother wants to make some work, she told you, go in the garden and pick up some radishes. If you go to the garden and you come back with a pumpkin, that means you have no clear idea what is a radish. But if you go and take a radish, you know what is a radish. You have a clear idea. But you cannot define, you cannot explain all the property of a radish. So a clear idea is to know what is the thing. To indicate, to be able to identify the thing. To have a distinct idea, that is more. It is not only to distinguish, to know that thing is a radish, or it is an onion, or it is an apple, but to know, to be able to give the constituent, the part, the knowledge we can take from that apple, from that. That is science. That is for a farmer. A peasant is able to distinguish all the different vegetables. Okay? But don't ask him the definition or the property of everyone. That is for a botanist, is for agronomist, is for a scientist. So the idea clear. So we can have of God a clear idea. Even your grandmother who never went to school, maybe, or grandmother, grandfather, they have a clear idea of God. The majority of Christians have a clear idea of God, but they don't have a distinct idea of God. When we ask questions, who is God? Explain me, prove me the extent of God, that they are, So that is, but we have a clear idea. And to have a clear idea of something is already the beginning of knowledge. So it is valuable. It is valuable. Okay. It is not necessary to know the entire reality of a thing to know the thing. For example, think about your father and mother. If you ask your mother, why mother? Mom, did you marry Papa? Why did you marry? She has a clear idea who was your father, but she does not have a distinct idea. She was all her life to discover who is your father. And your father have always liked to discover who is your mother. That is the reason why there are so many divorces. Because what we think is not exactly what we have. What you get is not what you see is not what you get. So that the clear idea of God is sufficient for us for the moment. But what we are doing now in philosophy of God, we try to have a distinct idea. We have a clear idea. We can say God exists. We can arrive to a knowledge of elementary knowledge of God, but we want to go further. Is the reason why we have 45 hours in philosophy of God, a semester on that. I continue for the text here. So in the square, a clear idea allows us, a gardener, to distinguish. Let's say, okay, explain that. Now, the idea of God as a being distinct from ourselves and from the universe. That is the idea of the majority of people. We speak even for an atheist. God is a supreme being, is the one who runs the universe. Of course, we accept his existence. The atheist does not accept the existence, but we have the same concept. Otherwise, there is no possibility of dialogue. So, and to whom we ourselves and the universe are our origin. That is the common knowledge. You go to China, you meet a Buddhist, you meet an animist in Africa, you meet a Catholic, a Protestant. We have that same idea. We are not from ourselves, somebody is above us, a god or gods or goddess, etc. Okay? Will serve this purpose of distinguish God from all other things. So it is in the definition, not the definition, in the first intuition people have of God everywhere, God is not, is different, except for one current we call pantheism. For pantheism we are one, And all of us together, we are God. We make God. Huh? There is only one substance. Spinoza said there is only one substance. The substance of God and the substance of man, we are one. Huh? Pantheism. And today, pantheism is called New Age. Huh? In fact, New Age is pantheism. Huh? We must be aware of that. Huh? So, will serve the, and will therefore be a clear idea, such it as it's needed to beginning our inquiry. So, next paragraph. The common idea of God, what is that? What is the common idea we find in every culture, in every civilization? First, a supreme being, transcendent, above. Huh? And we manifest that even physically. When we speak about God, what we do, we look at, no? At the sky. Huh? God. But the problem, I told you, we are here in North America, we say God is here. In Australia, they say God is here. But we have, it is a common, nobody think about God in the center of the earth. That is hell. No? Even for the Greek, huh? Because why? Because volcanoes expulse fire. That is hell. God is not there. That is for the bad, huh? The bad, the devil. But God is above. You know? Secondly, supreme, above, transcendent. Secondly, the supreme ruler of the world. He is the one who commands, is the authority. He is the one who reward and punish. He punishes. God is a judge for the majority of religion, even for the pagan. Okay? Third, the maker of the universe. Well, the maker, be careful, not the creator. The conception of God in the ancient, we saw that last class, did not include the idea of creation. So here, when we speak about maker, of course for us is creator. But for the Greek, for example, for those who have no idea of creation, God is the maker. God is the organizer. God is the desire. Because the desire does not imply creation. A desire, what it does, it takes objects, material objects, and he make a new arrangement with that, he make a new organization, and he does something beautiful, something useful. So that is the, for all people, God is at least an organization. The Greek called that demiurge, a demiurge. Voltaire, I call him the clockmaker, the great architect. Interesting. What is the symbol of Freemason? Freemasonry.
The angle.
The angle and the compass. The compass. No? The angle, right angle, because when you work, you use the right angle, no? And the compass. Yeah. Who is using a compass? An architect. And who is using a right angle? An artisan, a worker. The symbol is not innocent. God is the great architect. For the Illuminati, God is the great architect. Okay? And the God on your dollar is the God of the money. I don't want not to renew my visa. But in fact it's that. Okay? Well, be aware of that. Here, not far from here, on 99, just at the light, traffic light, you have a Masonic temple. If you look at the Masonic temple, you have that here. And when you see a man with that here, the architect, God is the architect, the one who created the world. Not create, organize the world, the clockmaker. Okay. And next one, because he is transcendent, Because we depend on him, because he is the judge, he is the boss, he is the one who runs the universe, I must be attentive to obey him. I must respect him. I must obey him. That is worship, reverence, respect. And we express that, we call that religion. In fact, religion is more than worship. Religion implies first a faith. There is no religion if there is no faith. But religion means relation with God. Comes from the verb religere in Latin. Religere or religere mean two meanings. To read again or to tie. To tie. So it is our relation with God. The religion means that. So every concept of God implies also the idea of religion. We cannot speak about God without understanding, implicitly at least, religion. Even the Illuminati, they have a worship to God. Their God, the God of the Illuminati. And they have ceremonies for that. They have a kind of cult, a ritual. Okay? Every religion has a ritual. Why? Because we want to express physically. Why? Because our body is united, is one with our mind, our soul. Religion is the expression of our understanding of God. Okay? And when we want to understand what is the religion of people, where do we go in the past? Where we go? In the tomb of the people. And when we want to study what is the religion of the Incas, the religion of the Indian, Eskimos, etc., we have to see how they bury their dead. Because if you accept the idea of God as a judge, you accept the idea of immortality, eternity, judgment, reward, and punishment. And that is universal, every religion. Every religion implies that is something after death. Okay? A remark. This idea is not incorrect, the idea we have of God. The idea is valuable because it has some real foundation. But it is not the result of any careful study or any explicit knowledge of the reasoning. That means we have not to study that systematically. That is philosophy. Philosophy is the research for the ultimate causes, but in an organized way, with a method. Okay? So the paragraph in the square. The common idea man has about God must be rationally justified or proved. For many people, the majority of people, they accept God without studying theology. For Catholics, we have the minimum in the catechism for First Communion. But for those who want to know better, to become a specialist, and they must study philosophy of God, and after that, consecrate 4 years to theology. Okay, so next page. Now, the reason idea of God. What we studied before was, I will say, the general idea of God. Now we go further. Those who reason, those who think, reflect on who is God. So it is, if you want, a scientific or philosophical approach of God. We can study God, the phenomenon of religion and God, without without being in the context of faith. We call that the science of religion. Science of religion. We study the different religion, but as we study the different society or the different kind of corn or kind of potatoes, you know, that does not imply the faith in God. So there is a difference between the faculty of theology, Catholic theology, and a faculty of science of religion or religious studies, you know. Because in theology, when we study theology, we refer not only to our reason, but we refer to the relation with God. What is a relation? A relation with a person is to be in contact with her or with him. How we are in contact? For men, it is through language, no? So it's the same with God. We are in contact with God because God speaks to us. That is revelation. No? Revelation. But that is the supreme knowledge of God, the revelation. But in philosophy, we try to have a universal knowledge of God without using revelation. So I go to the text here, 1.2.1. We have 5 different ways, first to know who is God. And to know who is God, the first thing is to know if He exists. So because we cannot know a thing if we don't know its existence. So from the proof of contingency, God, we are not necessary. We did not exist 100 years ago, and we exist now. So it happened that we exist. We are contingent. The proof from causality, there is no effect without a cause. If there is a good organization, a mysterious organization of the human body, of plants, of trees, etc., then we see there should be a cause for that. You know? Or the order in the world, or the finality in the world. In fact, the necessity of the beauty, all that are the different proof of the extent of God we study. So I don't want to explain that. Here it is the GPS. So we have to study the different ways. How we can know God exists. And when we know that God exists, after that, we can discover who He is. The first step is to know if He exists. And we know that God exists only from experience. In philosophy, of course in theology, God can speak to me. But in philosophy, God does not speak to me. He speaks to me indirectly through His effects, through facts. So we start from facts. We look at the order in the world. We look at the beautiful flower. When a mother contemplates his baby, and the most beautiful baby in the world, because it is her baby. For every mother, the baby she has, she is the best. No? It's normal. It's normal. But the question is, how is possible? So we are going from facts to the cause. That is the way we use to prove the existence of God. We proceed a posteriori. Remember, if P, then Q. The cause, the effect. If P, then Q. But we know Q. We know the effect. Can we know P? No. Not directly, but only after some research. You know? Otherwise, it will be evident. Everybody will be, without any merit to believe in God, it will be clear God exists. It's not clear. The proof is not clear. Millions of people, they don't believe in Him. You know? So we have to prove that Q was made by P. That is the first step of theology, natural theology. So I go to paragraph 126. So there is an idea of God. That idea of God we have is progressive. We don't have a perfect idea at the beginning. We don't know God by intuition. We know God step by step. It is the same for also science. We know things step by step. If you study, for example, biology, if you study physics, chemistry, you study step by step. You are not E.T. You know who is E.T.? Extraterrestrial. You remember the movie? E.T. E.T. So he took a book and he wrote, he knew everything. But no, it's not, we are not E.T. We proceed step by step. Okay? So the idea of God grows to express more fully and completely and distinctly what was implicit in the original idea we have of God, as we saw just before. Our idea of God emerges, comes from the study of the subject, from the study. And the idea of a necessary, infinite, intelligent first cause of the universe. That is the object of of what we are doing. Maybe you can open the door. It is very warm here. Is it? If you open the door, maybe we can have more air because I see someone. They are sweating. Maybe not because. Maybe it is not because of the weather. Maybe because he works so hard. Yes. Okay. So the role of natural theology. The natural theology, as a branch of philosophy, is the bringing out of and making explicit what was implicit in the unstudied idea of ordinary man. That is not true only for theology, it's true for every science. What is science? Is to make things unknown to become known. What is the word discovery? Discovery. Discover. To take off the cover. The cover, you go to the kitchen and you ask, what are you cooking? And to know what you do, you take off the cover and you see what you are cooking. Rice and chicken. Okay? So it's the same. Science is not to create something new. It is to know what is already there. So theology is science. Natural theology is science. Philosophy is a science. So we try to know. We don't put our mind in the thing, but we think, we take from the reality what it is there. Sometimes when you say, oh, he invented, an invention is not a creation. To invent, that means to find what is already there. To create is to do something from nothing. That is different. Okay? So, when we study natural theology, we try to uncover, to discover, to unveil, to take the veil out of what we see. We see the universe, but we want to go farther. So we can see the author of the universe. Okay? Incompleteness of the reason idea. For the idea of God is not formed from direct experience of God himself. Nobody among us have a direct contact with God. If we have that, you are already an elected and we are in heaven. But only through from experience of created thing, from the power of God expressed in his creation. It is the way man from the beginning to the end know God. In a natural way through his effects. Looking at the creation, we admire the Creator. We see that in the sun. In the sun, they say, you know, the one who is seeing the creation does not see God. He is guilty, because you should discover God. We should discover God, but of course, we can make a wrong reasoning. Don't forget. And we are searching. And when we are reasoning, we use a syllogism. You remember that? Sweet memory. We use syllogism. And when we use syllogism, we can sometimes not respect the law of syllogism. We call that Pharisees, error. So we reason, but someone, they reason, they arrive to affirm God. And other, they reason, and they arrive to deny God from the same fact. And secondly, also, there is also your freedom. Don't forget that. And they have ear, they don't listen, they don't hear. They have eyes, they don't see. Why they don't see? Because they don't want to see. They don't want to hear. And you remember when you were a kid, and your mother was telling you something. She said, listen to me. Listen to me. Because sometimes you don't want to listen. And the mother said, listen to me. In fact, in the Bible, to listen, it is to believe. To believe, to listen, to see. To discover God through His creation. Okay? I go to the next paragraph. The human knowledge of God is necessary and complete because this knowledge we have of God is obtained through analogy. And all our science of God is by comparison. So, because it is by comparison, by analogy, is necessary, incomplete. You remember when we study analogy. In the analogy, there is something common, but there is something different. And because it is something different, we don't have a perfect knowledge of God. So we are condemned, even if we study a lot, during years and years, our knowledge will be always incomplete. Because if your knowledge be complete, you are God.
So, in an analogy, could you say that again about analogy?
In analogy, there is something common and something different. For example, God, our Father. My father, Antonio. The father of the nation, United States, Washington, for example. Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh. No, forgive me. And the father, the idea of father applied to God. The idea of father applied to my father or to the father of the nation has a common meaning, the meaning of engender, to make something. But they are not the same. Think about the notion of king. King. I said that yesterday in the class of philosophy, compendium. King. Jesus Christ is king. The King of England, George VI, or Henry VIII. I prefer George VI. He did not kill people. The king of rock and roll. Elvis. Oh, he knows very well. And the king of potato, Joe Blow. They are king. But they are not exactly the same. I cannot say Jesus Christ is the same thing as the King of England. King of Kings. Why? Because the idea of king is to be the first, to be the best, to be the leader, to be the one to command, you know. That is analogy. So, what our relation with God is filled with analogy because we know God through comparison. How I can know the mercy of God and through, how I can know the power of God through effect, but I don't know God directly. So we must accept humbly that never we will have a perfect knowledge of God. Okay? But it's not a reason to say, I stop. Who can pretend in physics, in biology today, to say he can have the perfect, absolute knowledge of what is a human being, what is a body, what is a nature? Nobody. It is the reason why we continue to research. And every big company invests a lot of billions of dollars to know better, to know better, to know better. Okay? So it's the same in when we speak about God.
Father, some people they say that God is the abstraction. So
God is an abstraction? Who said that? Ho Chi Minh?
No.
If Ho Chi Minh says that, he is right.
Yes.
Because for Ho Chi Minh, God is not existing. It's a pure abstraction.
Abstraction. So how can I explain it by the comparison with them? Is God's abstraction?
Well, is the good question? Is God an abstraction?
No.
No. Because the abstraction exists. The fruit of that exists only in your mind. For Marx, for Nietzsche, for Freud, all those men, God is an abstraction. He exists only in the mind of men. For us, God is not an abstraction. It's a real being. But we know that real being using our mind, using our reasoning. But the fruit of our reasoning is not a pure abstraction, we arrive not at a concept. God is not a concept. God is a reality. And if we have the concept of God for us, as powerful, as merciful, as a father, all that, it is because he is a real being. He is the real being. By himself, existing by himself. That is very important. God is not an abstraction. You understand that? Huh? Because to affirm God is an abstraction, it is today, he is a being of reason. Oh, yes, the God you have in your mind, yes, no problem. God is not in my mind, God is outside of my mind, he's the one who did my mind. Okay? That question is very interesting. Like an application now. How we can know God? The way we know the existence of God is applying the first principle of metaphysics. The first principle we saw in philosophy of man, we saw in logic. And among the principle is the principle of causality. So the knowledge we have of God is founded on the principle of causality. How much knowledge of a cause can be derived from a study of the effect? So only the knowledge of that cause, that the cause exists, and as much knowledge of the nature of the cause as the effects are capable of revealing. What that means? We know the cause of a thing only through the effects we can know. So we cannot detach the cause from the knowledge of the effect. So the principle of causality is fundamental in metaphysics. Why? Because metaphysics essentially is the search for the ultimate causes. We saw that, the search for the ultimate causes. A metaphysician is searching for, what is the object of metaphysics? First is existence. No? Do you exist? Is it important to exist? What is the first quality, the foundation of your being? What is the first reality in your life? It is to exist. I exist. So existence is fundamental. It is it is what the metaphysics study. But metaphysics study not only what is existence, act and potency, matter and form, study also where we are coming from and where we are going to. Ultimate causes. And how I can know the ultimate causes? Through the effects. I can know God only through his effects. I have no direct knowledge of God. So it is very important to realize that we cannot know God if we don't accept the principle of causality. And there is a philosopher that who had a great influence in, especially in the Anglo-Saxon world. It is David Hume. And David Hume is a sensualist. I mean, he knows only what he knows through his senses. And he denies two things. He denies the concept of substance, and he denies the concept of causality. In fact, when he denies the concept of substance and the concept of causality, he denies metaphysics. Because the object of metaphysics is substance and causality. And that is important to know that David Hume had great influence because the majority of university, especially Anglo-Saxon university, there is no department, there is no teaching of metaphysics. No teaching of metaphysics. And that will be the foundation of positivism. So all that, you know, all the things exist at random. And you go to Darwin, and Darwinism, it is that happened by chance. You know, there is no real causality. in philosophy there is a filiation between philosophers. Like I have a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather. In philosophy, nothing is no news under the sun. Huh? The philosopher, they use the idea of those who came before him. So here, the influence of Hume is very, very great. So in fact, only a few universities have a class of metaphysics, among them Catholic University. But the others don't have that. Or they study metaphysics as a curiosity of the Middle Age. You know, those people in the Middle Age, the Dark Age, they were dreamers, they study metaphysics. They were dreamers, they study metaphysics. That is the influence of the video. Okay? So, but we affirm that we cannot know an effect without a cause. And we cannot know being if it is not a substance. Being is a substance. We saw that in logic. Being is something existing. And on that substance, substaris, that means to stand, under what? The predicament, the 9 predicament, the 9 quantity, quality, relation, action, passion, possession, when, where, all that are in the substance. I continue now, in the next paragraph. So the principle of causality requires that there should be no perfection in the effect which is not found at least equivalent in the cause. Common sense. No? The perfection I found in the effect must be in the agent. For example, you look at the beautiful painting. In France, we have a famous painting, probably the most famous painting in the Louvre is Mona Lisa. It's an enigmatic woman. It is said that the man who ordered that painting never paid Leonardo da Vinci. But Leonardo da Vinci was very well rewarded because that he won the most. People, they spend 3 hours waiting to look at Mona Lisa. Why? Okay. Mona Lisa, I saw it, yes, and a beautiful woman smiling, you know, enigmatic. But that revealed the genius of Leonardo da Vinci. We know the genius of Mozart because we listen to his music, no? We know the genius of Raphael when you go to the Sistine Chapel, we do that beautiful, huge painting of the Last Judgment. So we know the value of a cause to his effect, a painter to his painting, a poet. It is what I do when I give you a game. Because in the game, you manifest what you are, what you know. No? But I am sure that what you write does not express completely what you are, what you know. I have only a little part of your knowledge on the paper. Is it impossible that in 2 hours you express your own knowledge? So I start from the effect I have on the paper. I say, yes, you understand well, yes, not, okay, A, A plus, no A plus. You know, that's exactly causality. I know you are understanding the subject because of the effect, and the effect is answer to the question. No? So it is the way we know God. We know God through the effect. Okay? That means to his creation. So the principle of causality is central. Next paragraph. Whatever perfection are found in the effect must have their equivalent in the cause. We cannot give what we do not possess. We cannot give what we do not possess. We can give only what we possess. So if I don't know Vietnamese, I cannot speak Vietnamese. I cannot give what I don't possess. If I never study biology, I cannot be a teacher of biology. We give, so the creation is the effect of the cause. That means the beauty, the order in the creation must be in the mind, in the power of the Creator. You know? That is the way we know God. So, and you look at man. What I make a parenthesis in the Bible. How the author of Genesis depicts man when God created man. He created man to his image and resemblance. That means if you look at man, man is intelligent, man is a loving being, man is able to build many things, etc. I can say God must be intelligent, but infinitely intelligent, infinitely loving, infinitely merciful. If you look at your mother, how your mother loved you during years and years and years, then you can say God is infinitely loving. You know? So we start from the effect, and we say, if the effect is such, the other must act exactly the same, and more, of course, and more. Okay? It can have more. For example, when I teach you something, I'm sure I cannot give you all the knowledge I have, and when you write your exam, but you don't give all what you know. I know that. But you know, examination is like a sample. You know what is a sample? We take a sample. You go to the hospital and they take a little bit of your blood. It is a sample of the state of your blood. Okay? So the creation will be, I would say, a kind of sample to know who is the Creator. Next page. But the effect does not need to possess all the perfection of the cause, or even any perfection of the cause in the degree which the cause possesses. That means a greater power can produce a little thing. If you can raise 100 pounds, you can also take 20 pounds. You know? So that means there is not a perfect coincidence between the cause and the effect. The cause can be superior to the effect, but the effect reveals the cause. When you write a letter, you express a part of your capacity of writing. You don't express the totality of your capacity of writing. Okay? The effect cannot be superior to the cause, but it can be inferior. A great pianist, for example, can play a very simple melody, practice for beginners. It is what Mozart did when he wrote a little French song, "À vous dirai-je maman." "À vous dirai-je maman." Very simple. After that, it's not simple. But Mozart is able to write something very simple, but that does not express the genius of Mozart. Okay? And when you want to study an author, you don't read only a paragraph of a book. You read the whole book, and you read many books of that author before giving a right idea who is that author. So I continue. Hence, from a study of effects, we have no right to expect to arrive to an exhaustive knowledge of the cause. That means, looking at the creation, we cannot arrive to the totality, at the complete knowledge of God. Okay? But we arrive to something valuable, but we don't know the totality. An example, here we have many, in the seminary, many Vietnamese, sister, brother, priest. We have an idea of what are Vietnamese people. Yeah, an idea, but maybe it is better or it is worse, I don't know. It's a sample, it's a sample, okay? So, now after the paragraph here, we have a correction to do in the square. Consequently, we have no exhaustive knowledge of the cause from consideration of the effect. To affirm the effect, the conditioned Q the condition Q do not allow to conclude to the validity of the condition P. So P is the condition and Q is the condition there. Okay? Is it corrected on your copy?
Yes.
Yes? Ah, okay. Okay, so it was correct. The next paragraph. Now, the effect of God's power are inadequate to their cause. Their perfection does not equal the perfection of the cause that had produced them. And consequently, we cannot know from them the full perfection of God as cause. But only two things. First, God as the cause must exist. That means if there is effect, there must be a cause. So God as a cause of that exists. Secondly, he must possess the perfection at least equal to the effect. That is the minimum we can know. When we know, that is true for God, it's true for any kind of cause. But what is important? God is not a univocal cause. That means God does not produce exactly who He is, what He is. Otherwise, the thing will be produced should be the same thing. That means God should produce another God. Is it possible that God produce another God? No. Because essentially the fundamental characteristic of God is to exist by Himself, assez. So if God produces an effect, and that effect will be identical to Him, another God, that other God will not be God. Because it will depend on, it is impossible to have two gods. Okay? So the relation between God and the effect is analogical. It's not equivocal. It is the same. If you paint, for example, Mona Lisa is the painting of a woman by Leonardo da Vinci, that painting is not exactly the woman. It is something analogical. A picture is something analogical. It represents another thing. You know? So the relation between God and His creation is not a relation of equivocity. Univocity. That means for us, a man engender a man, a cat engender a cat. No? Can God engender a God? Or you say the Father engendered the Son. That is another theology. No? But as a God, no, there is not two gods, only one God. So one God creates something, makes something, produces something. The thing produced is necessarily not univocal. It is analogical. Being in God and being in man is not exactly the same. It is analogical. It is being. Both we exist. God exists, I exist. But God exists by Himself, and I exist by another. Both we exist, analogy. Analogy, center of theology. Something common, something different. And if the paragraph between in the square, in the rectangle, the effects on the creation, for example, a dog begets a dog. But these effects of God are inferior to His being. Even for you. For example, you are, and you can think, but you can produce also a good meal. We are intelligent, but using our intelligence, we produce something which are material. You organize the material thing. So we can put our mind in the material thing. The material thing, I cannot say that the chair, the desk is exactly the same thing as a human being. So if it is true for us, it is a fortiori true for God. That means the effects of God are not identical to His nature.
So the effects of God are inferior to His what?
To his power, to His nature. For example, the painting of Mona Lisa in Paris is inferior to the nature of Leonardo da Vinci. That painting will never be intelligent. It will never speak. But Leonardo da Vinci is intelligent, he speaks, So the effect they are analogical. That means the effect reveal me the maker. Suppose I go to your family and you tell me, you know, my mother is a good cook. How I can know that your mother is a good cook? Eat her food. You know? But the pie your mother prepare, for example, that pie, it is the same nature, the same level as her own existence as a human being.
Oh,
No. So it is true for us, it is true for that. So we cannot say that the cause is identical to the effect. The effect can be inferior to the cause. Okay? When you were at primary school, you learned how to write. Your teacher hold your hand. At that time, it was not dangerous to do that. And you make an F. You know? So the capacity of your teacher was the capacity of your teacher exactly only the capacity of writing F? No. But if the teacher can help you to write an F, because he has more than that, you know. So that is exactly I want to speak about God. We know God through His creation, through the effect. And through the effect, we can have an idea of God by comparison, by analogy. St. Thomas speaks about that. The power of a univocal agent is wholly manifested in his effects. The generative power of man, for example, engender a man. But the power of a non-univocal agent does not only manifest itself in the production of the effect. You don't manifest totally who you are when you write a paper. You manifest only a little bit of what you are. Okay? But I don't want to speak here about St. Thomas and putrefaction. He uses the knowledge of his time. You know that spontaneous generation was destroyed by Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur, pasteurization. It's interesting to see that the argument used by St. Thomas has no value scientifically. But in his time, people believe in spontaneous generation. Okay. So at the bottom of the page, when it follows that his effect is always less than his power. His effects are always less than his power. It is relatively true for man in many things. It is absolutely true for God. For page 4, so the reason idea is analogical. We have of God only knowledge by comparison, referring to what we know, to our senses, to our own experience. So the idea is necessarily analogical, for it is not derived from the immediate experience of God, but from our experience of things. Okay? But I go to next paragraph. Well, our thinking must be done in abstract concept. Abstract, of course, the concept of God is abstract, but God is not abstract. God is real. But our concepts are necessarily abstract. But they are abstract from experience. When I speak about the justice of God, the mercy of God, I start from experience. Otherwise, I cannot speak about God if I have no idea from my own experience. So I cannot express the full reality of the simple perfection of God in any one concept. I have to use many concepts to have an idea. It is what we'll do in the second part of the class. We'll try to study all the attributes of God we can know to have an idea of who is God. You know? And next paragraph. Therefore, I must express God's essence in different concepts. So there are many ways to express God. God is infinitely just. God is infinitely powerful. God, we have all the attributes of God. We study in second part. And when we see an attribute of God is identical to God. For example, God is just. God is essentially just. God is merciful. God is essentially merciful. We see that in the... so because in God there is absolute unity. All these attributes are one with himself.
What's the difference between an attribute and an effect?
And
And an effect? of God?
between an effect and...
An attribute.
Bon. The attribute, it is an effect, if you want, we attribute to the subject. The effect is the produce of an action, of a cause.
Yeah.
Bon. The attribute, it is a qualification, one of the 9 predicament, category,
Yeah.
attributed to the subject.
Okay.
Attributed or predicated. Okay? Next page, page 5. And nevertheless, our understanding of some knowledge of God is valuable. Even if we don't arrive to a complete knowledge, it is valuable to know, to do the best to know what we can. Huh? And it is not a loss of time. And that class is useful to you to prepare especially your class on theology. And if you become a teacher in the high school, it will be useful, sure. Okay? You can read that in the summary here in the square. Now the possibility now, how we can form. Someone, the idea of God. Someone, they say there is no possibility of knowing God or forming an idea of God. They don't deny God, but they say we don't know. We call that agnostic. We spoke about that last time. Huh? Agnosticism. Huh? Agnostic. We don't know. To know in Greek, to know in English. Huh? We don't know. That is the position of those who say no. In fact, all those who deny metaphysics, they are condemned to be agnostic. At a philosophic point of view, if you say, I cannot know, I deny metaphysics, that means I cannot know the ultimate causes, so you cannot know God. Is the reason why many people, philosophically speaking, they are agnostic. But the agnostic said, okay, I cannot know God by my reason, but I can believe in God. So they go to the temple on Sunday because they believe in God, but they say, I don't know God through my reason. I have pure faith in God. Is it possible? No. No. But they pretend. So I think they have condemned a kind of schizophrenia. Because, if you believe in God, so for example, Herbert Spencer would say God is the unknowable. You see, God is the unknowable. If God he cannot be known, how we can believe in Him? The first condition to believe in God is to have a reason to believe. And to have a reason is to use my reason, reason and faith. Okay. So, in fact, the consequence of the denegation of metaphysics lead to the denegation of the knowledge of God through our reason. And for many Protestants, they are at ease with that, because the ideal for many is pure faith. We call fideism, pietism or fideism. To believe without understanding. It is exactly the position of the Islamist. The same thing. You believe without reasoning. And they form people to believe without reasoning. Recently I saw a movie, a documentary about a German soldier during the war. And that old soldier, they were in Russia suffering, and they suffered so much. He said, we obey like robots. They form us in such a way we cannot reason. So that is pure faith. I believe without any reason. I believe that is fideism. Okay? And that is very dangerous. That leads to fanaticism. Page 6. So in modern philosophy, I spoke about Hume. I spoke about Kant also. who deny the capacity of knowing God through my reason. But Kant, through metaphysics. But Kant arrived to the affirmation of God through ethics. Through ethics, from duty. I am obliged. There is obligation. Or duty is an absolute. From duty, he arrived to prove the extent of God. We see that also. It is the moral proof of the extent of God. You have another current is Kant and positivism. So those people, they deny deny that the knowledge of any spiritual reality. We know only what we can measure. Positivism. Kant in France. And that positivism is very influenced today. For example, it influenced the theory of evolution. It's influenced by that. Yeah. And some philosophers, they attack positivism to prove that not everything can be measured. For example, duration. Can we measure duration? Can you measure love? Can you measure a lack of freedom? Cannot. And is a lack of freedom, is a lack of love, is a real reality? When your father said, I accept, I say yes, and your mother, is it, we are able to measure that? No. Love cannot be measured. Is the characteristic of love not to be measured? But love is a reality. So not every reality can be measured. So we cannot accept positivism. So, but positivism, of course, is, if we accept positivism, you cannot accept you cannot accept that you can prove God through reason. Of course, you can be a believer, but if you are a believer, it is irrational. You know, for someone, page 7, in fact, for many, to recognize the extent of God is sentiment, is feeling. That school is the Scottish school of philosophy. We study that when we study philosophy, ethics. In ethics, we study capitalism. We study that. Emotion. To believe in God, to accept God in my life existing, is a question of feeling, a question of emotion. And it is the reason why for many, see, religion is for women and children. Man has no emotion. Man does not cry. To cry, to have emotion, that is not for man. And if you go to Rome, I went to Rome many times, on Sunday in the church you have 18 women for 2 men. Because macho, that feeling, you know, to believe in God, to pray, that is feeling, is not reason. It's not reason. That is an interpretation of our knowledge of God. So in that interpretation, if those who accept God, it is only because they have emotion. It is not rational. They accept God in an irrational way. To be a believer is to be irrational. Is the reason one for many years, up to recently, up to Henri Bergson, if you are a scientist, you cannot be a believer. If you are a believer, it's only on Sunday. The rest of the week, you are not a believer. You are an economist, you are a businessman. On Sunday, okay, you are pious, you give some money, but that is not rational. It is only your emotion. During the week, you use your reason to make money. The agnostic position, a consequence, it is to, will end by that, it is despise religion. In fact, agnostic, they don't attack religion directly, but they destroy religion indirectly. Why? Because religion for them is not a lack of reason. There is no reasonability in religion. So the agnostic position is not innocent. Of course, apparently they are innocent. They don't deny God, but they deny the capacity of knowing God. And by the way, they deny any religion. For them, any religion is based on emotion, is based on pure faith, is not based on reason. And they make a dichotomy, a separation between faith and reason. And John Paul II wrote an encyclical to prove there is no dichotomy. Both are together. We need to both together. So it will be, in fact, with good intention, in fact, they are anti-religious. They don't want to destroy religion, but the way they interpret our knowledge of God as only a pure emotion, not using no reason, in fact, they make a religion something only for the feeble of mind or the poor. And you have three men who, in fact, explain that very clearly. We call the three philosophers of the dead of God, Nietzsche, Marx, and Freud. Nietzsche, Marx, and Freud. Because they say, in fact, religion is only a creation of man. Is only a creation of man. And you don't use your reason, you use especially your emotion. In fact, emotion is a reality in our life. When you look at television, I would say 90% of what is said on television is emotion. All advertising is based on emotion. And even politics is based on emotion. Is the reason why our holy friend Plato in his eternal sky level of eternal truth, he says democracy is not good because it is based on emotion. A religion based on emotion is not good. So we have to affirm that a religion is rational. Every religion is rational. Even the religion of the pagan is rational. Because when a man has a relation with God, he uses not only his emotion, he uses his reason. So next class we will continue with other philosophers. Good appetite, brother.